Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Nashta Prayeshva Vadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nastiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatarājuhava Putreti tam mayatayo taravo vinedu Tam sarva bhuta hridayam munimanatosmi Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nidhinani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravan Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyacha Patitanam Bhavaniyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Ajanulambita Bujokna Kavadato Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksha Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataram Yandach Pravishya Mamavachi Mimam Prasuptam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Darasvadhamna Anyam Shahasta Charana Shravana Tvagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Bhakti Muhu Pravahatam Tvaime Prasanga Bhuya Hananta Mahatam Amala Shayanam Yenanja Salbanau Vyasanam Bhavadim Neshe Bhavad Gunakatham Ritapanamata. Hare Krishna. So we're reading the 29th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the explanation of devotional service, where our Lord Kapiladev is explaining how we can ultimately be cured from the disease which every one of us has. That's the disease of enjoyment, kama raga. And this is a mortal disease. And And this disease manifests in this material world in our desire to control. But the world is designed in a very tricky way that those things which we want to control and we think we're controlling start controlling us. That's the inevitable law of this world. Whatever we are trying to enjoy is actually whatever we think we're enjoying is actually enjoying us. Like in Sanskrit, the food is called anna. Anna means something which you eat, but anna, according to the rules of Sanskrit, also means something which eats you. So whatever you enjoy is actually enjoying you. Whatever we're controlling is controlling us. Like people try to enjoy drugs, but ultimately the drugs controlling them, enjoying them. Or sometimes we create something, achieve something. So inevitably, when a person achieves something in this world, at the end, he will be controlled by something which he achieved. He will be the slave of this thing. So that creates in our consciousness raga and dvesa. And raga and dvesa, attachment and hatred, blinds the people. And therefore we cannot perceive the Lord. So the philosophy is to give us the vision. Therefore in Sanskrit philosophy is called darshan. Philosophy is the way to see things and the methodology which helps us to see something which we don't see now. And the most important blind spot which we all have is our blindness or inability to see or perceive the Lord. So in this chapter, which is very important because of this, it's basically the crux of the whole issue. Lord Kapiladev teaches us how to see the Lord, how to perceive the Lord, how he gives us the methodology by which we will be able ultimately to perceive him. And he basically says that this methodology is very simple. You respect everyone and you try to feed everyone. And by respecting everyone, you neutralize your dvesa. By giving respect to other people, you diminish the intensity of your dvesa, which is very prominent now in our consciousness. And by feeding everyone, by giving something, some gifts to other people, you diminish your attachment, your raga. So in this way, the disease of raga and dvesa, which are born ultimately from kama, from our desire to enjoy and control, will be cured. These symptoms of raga and dvesa will be cured. And in the end, we will be able to see or to perceive the Lord, which is the end result ultimately. So we have to worship him, but not only worship him, and that's the point, that's a very important point of this chapter. Not only directly worship the Lord, but also try to see the Lord in every living entity and relate with other living entities accordingly. And yesterday at the end of the class, Jagadatma Prabhu said that he was trying to be nice to one beggar, but beggar became nasty to him because he didn't give him what he wanted to give, what he wanted him to give. So the beggar became nasty and started attacking him, right? Beating him. So it's interesting that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in explaining one of the verses, actually foresaw this event which happened with Jagadatma Prabhu. And which happens with basically many people. It's interesting how he explains this. That's his explanation of the verse number 27. In the verse number 26, Kapiladev says that you should not discriminate between your belly and the belly of other living entities. In other words, you have to feed them even before you take food yourself. And that's the injunction. That's the the imperative mood. It is stated that you have to do it. This is the vidhi. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, but you cannot feed everyone. There are so many beggars. You cannot really satisfy everyone. If you try to feed and you go out and say, hey, whoever is hungry, come here, and then there will be a line of people, and they become very angry with you when the food is finished. So what to do? Therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains the 27th verse, Athamam sarva bhuteshu bhutatmanam kritalayam archayet danamana bhyam martya binena chakshusha. He says, if you cannot feed them, at least give them some respect. At least give them some glass of water. And even if they become angry at you, still, you offer them some respect. That's how he translates, because he says, atha, as we translated yesterday, and as Srila Prabhupada translates here, usually means therefore. That's usually signifies the conclusion of everything else which was said before. Atha, therefore, do this and this and that. But according to some dictionaries, atha means on the contrary. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes this meaning of the word atha and says, even if they, try to attack you and beat you, I'll give them some gift which you have, maybe apple or banana or whatever. And well, that's his problem. That's not your problem. You did what you're supposed to do. So, anyway, what he says, if you cannot, satisfy everyone, just try your best. Respect them. Basically, mana dana, dana mana. Do whatever you can, give whatever you can. If you cannot give anything, give some respect to them and some friendliness. That's what you should do. So that's how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this thing. And I also wanted, we read till the verse 33, we will read the verse 33, but I wanted to also come back to the verse 32, which is arthagyat samshaya cheta tatah shreyak svakarma krit mukta sangas tato bhuyan adogda dharman atmanaha. Better than those who know the meaning of the Vedas are those who can dispel the doubts. Better than those who can dispel the doubts, those who strictly follow the duties prescribed in the Vedas. And better than those mukta sangas, those who achieve liberation already, who are liberated and who are not really using or employing dharma for their own benefit. They're not milking dharma. Adogda dharman atmanaha. Prabhupada, he gives a very interesting interpretation to this in the purport, which I wanted to bring your attention towards. He says that in the previous word, it was said that the Brahman is the best among everyone else, and Arthagya, because Brahman studies the Vedas, and those who know the meaning of the Vedas, they're even better than the ordinary Brahmanas. And Prabhupada says, those who know the meaning of the Vedas, they are whom? Vaisnavas. So he says that the next stage after the Brahmana is Vaisnava, because Vaisnava is the one who really understands the meaning of the Vedas. That's what he says, Arthagya. And better than the Brahmanas, better than ordinary Vaisnavas, is those Vaisnavas, if we take Arthagya as Vaisnava, then better than ordinary Vaisnava is the Vaisnava who can dispel the doubt. In other words, the preacher is better. There are Vaisnavas who don't preach, but better than the Vaisnavas who don't preach are Vaisnavas who preach. And better than those who can preach the knowledge, Prabhupada says, a Vaisnava who knows the science of absolute truth, but is not able to preach such knowledge to others, is described as being of the lower stage, and one who not only understands the principles of the science of God, but also can preach, is the second stage, and one who not only can preach, but also sees everything in the absolute truth, and the absolute truth in everything is the highest class of Vaishnava. So Prabhupada gives a specific twist to this whole ladder, or the description of the stages of development of consciousness. So, and ultimately in the verse 33, which we will read now, Lord Kapiladev describes the highest possible development of consciousness. What is the next stage? And it seems like, there is no next stage, because already Mukta Sangha, you're already liberated. Adogda Dharma Natmanaha, you're completely, detached from Dharma, you're not selfish. But there is a higher stage. Okay, let's read. Tasman mayarpite shesham kriyartatma nirantaraha mayarpita manah pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha napashyami param bhutam akartu samadarsanat. So Lord Kapiladev says, Napashyami param bhutam. I don't see anyone, he says, I don't see anyone who is higher or better than the person who is described in this verse. And what are the characteristics of the highest possible achievement in this human birth is that Arpita, Mai Arpita Ashesha, the one who gave everything without keeping anything to himself, to me. The one who completely dedicated everything to myself. Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything into me without cessation. So, Mai Arpita Ashesha Kriya, Artha and Atma. The one who gave everything without keeping anything for himself, and that is Kriya, Artha, and Atma. He gave all his actions, Artha, all his wealth and Atma, himself ultimately. And that's the ultimate donation which we can give, ultimate sacrifice. I do not belong to myself anymore. The one who sacrificed his independence, the one who sacrificed his ego, independent ego, to the Lord. And he says, Nirantaraha, such person is doing it, Nirantaraha, constantly without any break. It's not that in the morning I gave myself to the Lord and by the lunchtime I changed my mind. And I'm on my own again. So he's doing it constantly, nirantaraha, without any end. And that basically means that he's constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. He always has this consciousness, I'm the servant of the Lord. As commentators are explaining, that it means that he does not utilize any other processes like karma or jnana or yoga. He is not really interested in performing any other processes. That's why nirantara, jnana karma dhanavritaha. My only goal and my only meaning of my existence is the performance of devotional service. Nirantaraha. Mayarpita manah pumso mai sanyasta karmanaha. He gave me mind. He renounced all the activities. As Prabhupada, he quotes Bhagavad Gita because in Maisanyasta Karmanaha, Mayarpita Manah, he gives mind. Anyway, same verses there in Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And Napashyami Parambutam, I don't see anyone who is higher than this. Akartuh Samadarshanat. I don't see anyone who is higher of this person who is akartu. Akartu basically means that he doesn't have any false ego. I am the doer. I am karta. I am not karta. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, by explaining this, he stresses one very interesting point. He says that the devotee, and this is of course a description of a devotee who gave everything to the Lord, the devotee, even in regard to his performance of bhakti, is totally dependent on the Lord. He doesn't say, I'm performing bhakti, I'm chanting. He never say, I'm chanting. Therefore, when you ask him how many rounds you chanted, he says, no, I don't know. Because it's not that I'm chanting. I'm being chanted. The mantra is actually going through me. So I'm not doing anything. Krishna gives me bhakti. Because sometimes we may relinquish our false identity or false ego towards other activities, but still maintain the false ego in regard to our performance of bhakti. I'm distributing books. So many books I distribute. I'm studying. We're not studying because the process of studying means you're higher than something which you study, right? Like scientists, they study rats. Who is higher, the rat or the scientist? The scientist, right? You cannot study Srimad Bhagavatam in the same way the scientists study rats, because Srimad Bhagavatam is higher than you. Therefore, the process which we are doing now is Krishna Anushilanam. This is, in the definition of bhakti, it's called Anushilanam. It means that we are offering ourselves to Srimad Bhagavatam. We're allowing Srimad Bhagavatam to change our consciousness. That's what's going on. Srimad Bhagavatam is higher, and we're opening our heart to Srimad Bhagavatam so that our consciousness would be changed in the process. So in this way, the devotee always remains in service mood, in this position of the servant, and therefore nirantara, and therefore he is a kartu. And Samadarshanat, Prabhupada says that it's not Samadarshanat like Mayavadis say. Samadarshanat, according to Mayavadis, means I'm the same as the Lord. Samadarshanat, they look at ourselves as the same as the Lord. No, he says Samadarshanat basically means that he sees everything equal in the sense that the Lord is present everywhere. But at the same time, they see the distinction. Otherwise it would be the contradictory, Kapiladev describing that one is higher and higher, and then Samadarshanat. And when you are on the top, all of a sudden it disappears. No, he sees that there are different grades and gradations of living entities, but he at the same time understands that Lord is present everywhere in every living entities, and therefore he offers respect to everyone. But it's very interesting, the rule here that he offers respect, the general rule or general conclusion of this whole section is that he offers respect according to the level of the person and according to one's capacity. These two considerations are there. Whatever he can, he offers, and he also understands the relative position of different living entities according to their development of consciousness, and offers respect accordingly. And the next verse is very important also because it teaches us how to offer respect. Manasaitani bhutani pranamed bahumanayan Ishvaro jivakalaya pravishto Bhagavaniti. So immediately Kapiladev dispels our doubt. What does it mean to offer respect to everyone? Does it mean that I have to bow down to dogs and to microbes and to germs and to ants? He says, no, manasa. You do it by your mind. You do it within your mind. Especially to those who are lower than you. You still respect them, but in your mind. You're not manasaitani bhutani pranamed bahumanayam. You show regard. You bow down to them, but in your mind. So, and it's very important, first of all, because we don't have to bow down to everyone, which is a big relief. It would be very difficult for us to always bow down to everyone. But the second point here is that sometimes we bow down to somebody by our body, but in the mind, we're still saying this guy is a nonsense. I'm superior than him. So Kapiladev is stressing here that you have to offer or to show your respect within the mind. Whether you bow down by the body or not, that's a different question. But with the mind, you have to offer respect. You have to be established in this respectful attitude towards every living entity. Why? Ishvaro jiva kalaya pravishto Bhagavaniti. Because in every living entity, Ishvara has entered together with his kala. Ishvaraha Jiva Kalaya. The expansion on the or the little particle of Ishvara is Jiva. And Ishvara Pravishtaha, together with Jiva, Bhagavan himself entered everyone. And that's, again, very important point. Extremely important point to understand what Lord Kapiladev wants to say to us here, because we know that in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bharat Maharaj, he showed a lot of respect to a little baby deer. He was worshipping little baby deer. What was the result? Yeah, he became a deer in the next life. So how does it relate to what Kapiladev is speaking here in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam? The mistake of Bharat Maharaj was that he respected or worshipped, one shall say, the baby deer independently of the Lord. He didn't do it because he knew that the Lord is present in the heart of this deer. He was trying to do it independently, and the result was disastrous. But on the contrary to this, Rantidev was feeding Chandala, and the result was glorious. Why? Because he was not feeding a Chandala, he knew that the super soul is there. And therefore he was respecting the Chandala because super soul is there. So for him it was the act of worship. And therefore it's basically what is being said here is that we have to be very careful by manifesting our compassionate nature. Because we may misapply the compassion and the sentiments, and the result will be very bad. Yeah, if the compassion is material, if the sentiment is material, ultimately we will be bound to this material world. We will remain, basically, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what's this verse? Suhridam sarva bhutanam. We will try to basically imitate the Lord. He is the best friend of every living entity. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. And we say, no, I'm the best friend of all living entities. Let me be compassionate to everyone. I'm feeding all these school children, day meal program, Akshaya Patra, whatever it is. So, you can do it. You should do it. We should respect everyone, but we have to understand how. Ishvara Jiva Kalaya Pravishto Bhagavaniti. We have to be very clear. I'm doing it because Bhagavan is there. Yes.
Maharaj, we should see the super soul in all the living entities, and we should respect everyone. But when it comes to certain personalities like Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa, Ravana, they were very envious of our Lord. They gave lots of distress to the devotees, Vaisnavas. So how to develop this respectful attitude for these kind of personalities?
You showed the respect to them by killing them. It's a very... How else you can show respect to them? You help them by depriving them the opportunity to create troubles to Vaisnavas. Yes?
Yes. What happened? he is asking about the envious people who are envious towards the devotees. And in the devotees community also we can see these type of mentalities. How can we deal with them?
It's like this. Either if you can correct them or help them not to do it, then you should try to do it. If you cannot, just respect them from a respectful distance, and make the distance as respectful as possible. So if we can correct them, correct them. If you cannot correct them, so just be little distance from them, because they're learning their lessons and hopefully they will learn their lessons. Ultimately, we have to understand that the process of bhakti is very powerful, and they will be purified at the end of the day. Krishna will take care of them. If you cannot take care of them, Krishna will take care of them. But at the same time, we should not come too close to them, because if we come too close to them, there is a good chance that this contagious disease of enviousness, because the germs of enviousness are there in our heart. And when we come too close to them, then these germs of enviousness will manifest in our heart as well. Therefore, we have to keep distance for sure. But, at the same time, bhakti is powerful. They are doing bhakti. They already went to a very high level of consciousness. So hopefully, at one point, they will realize.
Hare Krishna. I'm thinking of this, how you have to respect somebody in your mind, but sometimes Srila Prabhupada says, he's a rascal. He's a rascal.
Yes, he's a rascal.
So I'm also sometimes thinking, he's a rascal.
He's a rascal. No problem. But Krishna is in within
we
his
should not
heart.
make this mistake. There's some kind of mistake we make. We think it's the person that's bad, but it's what they did was bad.
Yeah.
So it's Jesus Christ, I think it's in the Bible, he says that thing, hate the sin, not the sinner. Like that. So is that correct?
Yeah, that's
definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. See, we should not mix two concepts. One is the concept of discrimination or judgment. Another is the concept of respect. They are not necessarily the same thing. We can judge according to our proper discrimination. He is doing something wrong. But at the same time, we do feel respect because he is the part and parcel of the Lord. Offering respect does not mean that we don't see what he is doing, where he is wrong, where he is right. We can see very clearly he is doing wrong. Respect doesn't mean that we have to become all of a sudden blind and, make this, smile all the time. Everything is good. This is my life.
People think that's what it means, though.
Yeah, well, okay, that's their problem. Discrimination, intelligence should be there. We should not switch off our intelligence or discrimination, because we are Vaisnavas, we are not Mayavadis. Mayavadis, everything is the same unless you hit me, and then I will show you how great I am.
Like Arjuna also, in Bhagavad Gita, we say to Krishna, better I die than kill them. But Krishna said, no, kill them.
Yeah, Krishna didn't approve this. Prabhupada said he didn't approve this misapplied or something like this.
Yeah, we are not, what did he say? We are not non-violent in that sense. We're pacifist. We will fight.
Yeah, we will fight. Very respectfully. No problem.
We will kill them respectfully.
Yes, Jagadatma Prabhu. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Bhakti yogascha yogascha mayamana vyudiritaha yayor ekatare naivam Purusa Purusham Vrajet. So Kapiladev is making the final conclusion to the material of this chapter and the previous chapter, where he was describing the meditation and the process of yoga. He says, Bhakti yogascha, but by both. By bhakti yoga and by yoga, by mystical yoga, by the yoga of meditation, or my mother, Manavi, Maya Udiritaha. I already, by me, both processes were described to you. And here there are different translations which could be. By these processes, you can achieve the state of union with the Lord, or Purushah Purusham Vrajet, or the Jiva will achieve the Supreme Lord. But Srila Prabhupada translates it differently. He says, by both, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. So Prabhupada gives a very interesting twist to the whole thing. The ordinary superficial meaning is that by yoga you achieve the union with the Lord, because it was said there that the yogi who meditates upon the Lord ultimately wants to enter into the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, which is objectless meditation. And by objectless meditation, you cannot achieve the Lord. You use the Lord as the hook, as the means to achieve this state of nirvikalpa samadhi, and therefore he uses bhakti for his own purpose, to enter the Lord, to achieve the union with the Lord. But by bhakti yoga, Purushah Purusham Vrajet, the Purusha achieves Purusha. The little Purusha, Jiva Purusha, achieves the Supreme Purusha, Param Purusha. So that's one thing. But Prabhupada says that in the purport he says that ultimately yoga, yoga means bhakti yoga. Prabhupada is very consistent in his approach. There is no other yoga. There is bhakti yoga, and even if you, if you start with the yoga, you have to come to the point of bhakti yoga, because only by bhakti yoga you get the real result. And this real result is, Prabhupada very beautifully describes this, Purushah Purusham Vrajet. The Purusha, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. Both are defined as Purusha. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Godhead and in the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer, and the spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. So we should not try to imitate the Lord in his enjoyment, but the quality is the same. So, and that's basically bhakti yoga. And Prabhupada, he warns against imitation. He says that if we try to imitate and enjoy by imitating, then it's called Maya. And he uses this Purushah Purusham Vrajet to say that this is the philosophy of Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva. Okay, so now from the verse number 36, Kapiladev is answering on the third question of Devahuti. The second question will be answered in the next chapter, but the third question about the nature of the time or definition of the time. Mother Devahuti asked him, please give the definition of the time. And why Kapiladev is doing this? Because he has already said that the whole point of this description is that God is everywhere, God is behind everything, and we can perceive, those who cannot perceive God directly in everyone's heart, they will perceive God in the form of time. So that's the form of God which is perceivable by us. And this form of God reminds us to behave properly. So therefore in the next verse he says, Etat Bhagavato Rupam Brahmanah Paramatmanah Param Pradhanam Purusham Daivam Karma Vicheshchitam. So he says that this Purusha, which is mentioned in the previous verse, can take or can be perceived in three different ways: as Bhagavan, as Brahman, and as Paramatma. So we're immediately reminded of the foundational verse of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.11. Vadanti tattva vidas tattva yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. This is the very foundation of Gaudiya Vaishnava explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, if we take our Gaudiya line of explaining Srimad Bhagavatam, the 1.5 verses are the most important. One is this one, and second one, Etecham Shakalach Pumsach Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. These two verses, they basically two pillars upon which the whole tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta is based, or commentation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And here it is very clearly repeated again that there are three stages of realization of God. Three distances by which we can approach God. And if we come closer, we'll see Bhagavan. If we are from very far distance away, we see Brahman effulgence. If a little closer, we see him as Paramatma. Depending on our desire and our method employed to him. But ultimately we will have to understand this. So, etat bhagavata rupam brahmanah paramatmanah param pradhanam purusham. This Purusha mentioned in the previous verse, he is param pradhanam, he is the chief among all the Purushas. Daivam karma vicheshchitam. Daivam karma vicheshchitam, his activities are divine. Sometimes it is also translated, this particular verse is translated as that he is param pradhanam purusham. This Purusha is behind Daiva or behind the providence, which is created by karma vicheshchitam. But Srila Prabhupada translates that he is this transcendental chief personality and his activities are all spiritual, and he explains this famous verse from Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvatam tyaktva punarjanmana iti mameti sorjunam. But basically, and it will become very clear in the next verse, that what is being explained here is that God is behind everything. And the next verse is the definition of time. So this is a very important verse for this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let us read this next verse. Rupa Vedas Padam Divyam Kala Ite Bidiyate Bhutanam Mahadadinam Yatobi Nadrisham Bhayam. So the definition of time is given in the first line of this verse. Rupa Vedas Padam Divyam Kala It Abhidiyate. The dictionary definition of time, Kala It Abhidiyate, is Rupa Veda Aspadam, something which causes forms of this world to change. The causal factor behind changing the forms or appearances of this world is time. Because otherwise, how you define time? What is time? Nobody knows what is time. So Lord Kapiladev gives a very precise definition. This is the cause behind every change which we can perceive in the world. We cannot see the Lord, we cannot see the time, but we can perceive the presence of the time by the changing of the form, and particularly our own form. When we see that our form changes, it's about time to think about the time, because everything is changing. So that's a very important point, that Krishna is reminding us all the time about his presence by changing the forms. In Greek philosophy, they say that you cannot step into the same river twice, because first of all, river is not the same, and second of all, you are not the same. So everything is changing. The Buddhist philosophies, they also say sarvam kshanikam. Everything is momentarily. Everything, is changing all the time. And therefore, Buddhists say that there is no permanent reality. But according to the philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam, the permanent reality is there. It's not that everything is changing, but Atma is not changing. God is not changing. But he reminds us about our false conception, which keeps us in this, keeps us bound to this eternally changing material world. And therefore, this definition is important. Rupa Bhedas Padam and Divyam. This is the second lakshana of Kala. Rupa Bhedas Padam Divyam. Divyam means amazing. Divyam means wonderful. Srila Prabhupada says divine, of course. Divyam literally from the Sanskrit root, div means it's one of the meaning of this root is that it's playing, krida. So the time, we see how the time is playing with everyone. As much as the cat is playing with the mouse. The mouse is running and the cat is catching it and then lets it go. And sometimes we feel like, we're caught by the time. And then after some time there is a relief and we think, oh, no, everything is fine, no problem, no problem. So this is how the time is playing with us. Therefore it's divyam. Divyam means also it's divine, it's ultimately the divine will of the Lord, which manifests as the time, but it's imperceivable. It's really amazing and wonderful. The time factor, who causes the transformation of the various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor. And that's second line of this verse, which is also very important. Bhutanam mahadadinam yato bina drisham bhayam. It is very clearly said that the living entity, they are in a state of fear. Bhutanam mahadadinam, starting with the greatest of them. All the greatest living entities like Lord Brahma, mahadadinam, if they are binadrisham, they will feel fear. So, of course, binadrisham can be translated in many different ways. Srila Prabhupada says, binadrisham, they don't understand that the time and the Lord are the same, and therefore they are afraid. If you understand that this is the Lord came to me, you will not be afraid. There is a famous anecdote from Roman history when Europe was invaded by Hunas, and Attila was the very cruel and fearful leader of these Hunas, and they were basically killing everyone and creating havoc all over Europe. Ultimately, they came to Rome. Huge army of these Hunas. And, basically, they would destroy everything. They would take the huge city, conquer the huge city, and destroy everything. So the Rome was about to... everyone in Rome was afraid. The only one who was not afraid was the Pope. His name was Leo I. So when he found out that this huge army of the Hunas, by which the whole Europe was terrified, is there by the walls of Rome, then this Pope Leo, with a couple of his assistants, came out directly. And he said, I want to see this Attila. And everyone was, shocked, even these Hunas, because they themselves were afraid of this Attila. He was such a cruel person. And Attila came out, and this Pope Leo I, he looked at Attila, and he says, welcome the... How you say this? Как кнут будет по-английски? Knut? Wipe, yeah. Welcome, O wipe of the Lord. So he didn't see him separately. He saw him as a representative of the Lord, by which the Lord is wiping us, by which the Lord is doing this. So he was not afraid. Everyone else was afraid. He was not afraid. Why? Because, as Prabhupada says, because he didn't see the difference between the time or this factor of this Attila sent by time and the Lord himself. And therefore he was happy, And Attila was so impressed by this that he said, okay, you go, and he didn't take over Rome. In this way, the Rome was saved. So one fearless person saved the whole country and the whole city. Why? Because he knew that there is no difference between the time and the Lord. and therefore he didn't have any fear. And of course, Binadrisham can easily be referred to the previous verses of this chapter, where Binadrisham means separatist. Binadrisham, the one who doesn't see that the Lord is in everyone's heart and who does not respect everyone. So it is another very important point, philosophical point of this chapter. If you offer respect to everyone and you feed to everyone, you will be free from fear. You will not be afraid of death because you will see that the Lord is there and you're already relating with Him in a proper way. So there will be no fear if you're like this. So the different interpretations can be given. And Binadrisham, of course, also may mean that you discriminate between other living entities in improper way. You think that somebody is higher, somebody is lower, not according to the proper conclusion of the Shastras, and so on and so forth. So that's the definition of time factor. Rupa bedas padam divyam kala ityabidiyate. And of course, another definition, very famous definition of time, is given by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita. What is the definition he gives? Yeah. And in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, how is it? Kalayatam kalosmi, right? Или kalaham. Among the subduers, I am the time. Among the controllers, I am the time. So the very word kalaha comes from the root kal. And root kal, Sanskrit root kal, means to put an end or to control. Or to calm down also. The English word calm comes from this root. So somebody who calms you, ultimately you become very calm. You will be very calm. All your agitations will be gone because of the time. The time makes everyone quiet, ultimately. So that's kala, and that's being explained in the next verse. Kalah kalayatam prabhu. Yes?
Maharaj, when we are talking about respecting all living entities, that is, we have to practice that. But also the injunction is that when someone is offending a devotee, so we have to be also like fire. And
yeah, again, we still have to remember that God is there within His heart. It doesn't mean that he cannot become foolish. Yeah, God is there, but the person is behaving in the wrong way. So you try to straighten him out or to make him behave properly, but still you know that the Lord is in his heart. That's not a problem.
Practically, how to do it? Like if some devotee is offending other devotee, and we don't understand how we should react, because we are also afraid of offending the other person, but he is doing unreasonable to a genuine devotee, and we feel angry also, but they may be senior to us, then we don't know what is the practical course of action from our side. And if we are not doing something, then we may not be doing our duty. So how to do it in a practical sense?
It's a big subject matter, but generally what is said that, if somebody is senior to you, but he's misbehaving, you try to refer his behavior to somebody who is senior to him, who is in the position to correct him. Or if you can influence him in a positive way, then try to influence him. Otherwise, try not to be involved into this and not to listen to criticism. The advice which I heard from my spiritual master, he said, if somebody is offending in front of you somebody else, and you don't know how to behave in this awkward situation, you please tell him, you're so advanced, you can do it. I'm not very advanced, I cannot do this. Please don't do it in front of me because I will be implicated, you know. So there are different ways of how to deal with it. And it's difficult. You know, society of devotees is a very difficult society. It's the most difficult society. Because we all know how it's supposed to be. And we all see that nobody is doing how he's supposed to do.
There is a lot of gap between theory and practical.
Yeah. And the ideal is so high. And because the ideal is so high, it sometimes makes us very judgmental and even very insensitive and cruel. Because we always try to compare with this ideal. And by comparing with this ideal, we're more or less, or the impetus to compare all the time with this highest ideal is sometimes imperceptibly for ourselves, unconsciously, it's just the envy which we have. But this envy which we have is being manifest in a very tricky way. You know, because we're saying, you know, this is the ideal, why you're not doing like this. And people become very judgmental because of this. And it's sometimes difficult to live in such a society where everyone is judging everyone and, you know. So the only solution to this is that we have to manifest kindness in our dealings. And this kindness may solve many, many problems. Because if the kindness in our personal dealings will be very prominent, then most of the time people will not feel the need to criticize other people. You know, why people feel the need, the psychological need to criticize others? Because they just miss love. And they try to compensate by criticizing others. But if there will be more loving interaction in our dealings, then it will be better. And let those people who are supposed to judge others. I'm not the judge. I'm a servant. And yes, I can see that he is not behaving properly, therefore I may keep a distance from him. But at the same time, I'm not the judge. I'm not somebody who is trying to, you know, if I cannot correct, what is the point? Otherwise, it's just gossip and rumors, you know, he said this and she said this and he did that. And, you know, in 1985, he said this and in 1986, he answered that. You know, all this kind of nonsense going on in the internet.
We also compare, like, if I myself also like judge myself, then I will also see that I am also far away from the ideal.
Yeah. So if you want to judge somebody, look in the mirror and do it, no problem. Okay, so the next verse number 38. Yontah pravishya bhutani bhutair akhilashrayah Savishvakyo dvijayagyo Vishvakyo dvigyoso Kalah kalayatam prabhu. So he says that Kalah kalayatam prabhu, or as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kalah kalayatam aham. Among those who can control, I am the time. The time is the supreme master, the supreme controller of all controllers, the supreme subduer of everything. I am the time. So how the time is controlling is described in this verse. By which means the time is controlling. The time is entering yo antah pravishya bhutani. The time is entering within everyone's heart, within in every living entity. Bhutair atya kilashrayaha. And he enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone, so he gives us the chance to exist. Bhutair atya kilashrayaha savishvakyo adiyagyascha. But also it is explained that the time is controlling. Srila Prabhupada doesn't say this, but the time is controlling by bhutani bhutair ati akilasreha. The time is entering everyone's heart. I think it's written here. The point number 6 causes every being to be annihilated by another. By entering into every living entity, the time is actually helping one living entity to kill another living entity. Jiva jivasya jivanam. The time is controlling every living entities through other living entities. This is how the time is exerting his control. We can see that, one living entity comes and, he's young and strong and he's on the top, and then somebody else is younger and stronger and he becomes old in the meantime, and, so he devours him, literally or indirectly by some other means. So the time is controlling everything, kalah kalayatam prabhu, by entering into different living entities and creating all the quarrels and all the distractions which are there. This is how the controlling power of the time is being manifest in this world. And also, the time is Vishnu himself. Sa Vishnu-akyo. He is Vishnu himself. This is another time, another name of time. Why it is another name of time? Because Vishnu means literally one who entered. One who entered. So one who is everywhere, who entered everything. And because the time enters everything, he is Vishnu. And therefore he gives the results of yagya. Ultimately, whatever we do, whatever sacrifice we do, the time will bring the result. In due course of time, the result will be there, because time knows everything, time enters everything, and by entering different living entities, the time exerts its control. Okay? Shall we go further? Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Generally, people think of time as, when we say Father Time. Father Time in European cosmology, they usually think of, the very old man with a sign that's cutting everything down. And that's also death personified.
Yeah.
Or Yamaraj.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
but
Krishna says, in one sense that he is Yama, because he's giving the result of your actions.
But at the end of this chapter, he will say that I am even the killer of Yama, no problem. So he's also under my control.
Yeah, Yama is also, because Yama is in the material world. Yeah, but in that with the Europeans, they think like that, and that's why they're afraid of God. They have fear, because he's going to kill you.
Yeah. Okay. So how we can help them?
They have this fear. And, Krishna says, we're God-fearing. We fear God.
Therefore,
because he kills them. His death
during the
personified.
months of December, we distribute Prabhupada's books. And say that, no problem, Krishna loves you ultimately. Okay, so let's read the next verse number 39. Nachasya kaschit daito. Nachasya kaschit daito. Nadvesyuna cha bandavaha. Avishatya pramataso. Pramatam janamantakrit. So here the impartiality of the time is being described. Nacha asya kaschid daito. Nobody is dear to him, to the time. Nadvesyo, he doesn't hate anyone. Nacha bandavaha, nobody is his relative. He is not partial. There is no, when it comes to time, you cannot really say, my dear time, I am your favorite son. Please don't do this to me. Time is very impartial. Time is actually blind. It doesn't do anything, according to his heart. Time is doing what he is doing in the form of time. It's also interesting, and there is possible difference in translation. Avishatya pramata so pramatam janam antakrit. Avishati apramataha. He exerts his influence and those, Srila Prabhupada very interestingly translates this. Avishati apramata so. He says that he inspires those who are apramata. Apramata means those who are not intoxicated, those who are not maddened, those who are not sleeping. So if you are not intoxicated by the enjoyment, by the material enjoyment, by the wine or intoxication of this world, then the time will inspire you. It's amazing, the devotees, they become more and more inspired in due course of time. Just a couple of days back, we met with one acharya of one of the mats. He's 92 years old, and he's completely fit. And he was in a hurry to his train, but before hurrying to his train, he sat down and he started giving lecture, and he became a volcano. He started, erupting, and he couldn't stop. He was just saying and saying with so much energy. So, the Vaisnavas, the older they become, the more enthusiastic they become. Usually, normal people, the older they become, the more depressed they become. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him. He translates apramataha as somebody who has not forgotten him. Avishat apramata. So for those who have not forgotten him, he gives them inspiration and life and everything. Pramatam janamanta krit. But to those people who pramatam, who have forgotten Krishna, antakrit, he puts an end to their activities. He destroys those who have forgotten. And another version of the translation is that he himself is apramata. The time is not sleeping. Pramata can mean sleeping, pramata can mean intoxicated. So he himself is not intoxicated. He's impartial, he is there, he's watching everyone. If you think that the time sleeps, the time now is sleeping, no, time never sleeps. 24 hours a day, time is watching you. You sleep. And in your sleep, the time catches you. So everyone else is sleeping, the time is not sleeping. That's another definition of time. I don't remember now, but the time is somebody who never sleeps. So I think it's Chanakya Pandit, he gives this definition, that everyone else sleeps in the lapse of time, but the time never sleeps. So always time is watching you, and when the time comes, that's it. Finished. No more. No more. So we should definitely remember that the time is there. And how we can remember? Yeah, by seeing that everything changes. So time is there. And if we forget about him, then antakrit, the time will just put an end to our foolish forgetfulness. So that's the... And Prabhupada says that Harim vina naivasritim taranti. It's not possible to be saved from the repetition of birth and death without the help of the Supreme Lord. Again, the same point that we should understand very clearly, that there is no other shelter. And therefore, in the previous verse, it was said that the time is akila ashraya, the shelter of everything. So we should take shelter of the Lord and actually gratefully understand that the time is the reminder. Like, we have in these machines, we have the reminders if we forget anything. And something started beeping, beep, 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 it means you forget. So next time when you see some changes in yourself, it means some reminder is there, some program. The gray hairs, it's a reminder. Why the black hair should become gray. May remain black. Krishna is just gently reminding. Time is going, time is going. And then, the teeth falls out. Another change, another reminder to forget, your glasses, so on and so forth, no problem. Anyway, that's the built-in reminder. Works very nicely, very beautifully. In these machines, the reminder always gives the same beep, 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 beep. In the form of time, Krishna gives different beeps. The whole, spectrum of different beeps. But the message is the same. Time is going. So, anyway, now we come to the power of time, how the time manifests himself. And we still have 6 verses. So let's read these verses one after another. Yad bayat vati vatoyam suryastapati yad bayat yad bayat varshate devo bhagano bhati yad bayat. So it's very clear. Because of fear, yad bhayat, vati vatoyam, the wind is blowing, surya stapati yad bhayat, because of fear of him, the sun is shining, yad bhayat varshate devo, because of fear, the god of rain gives the rain, bhagano bhati yad bhayat, and out of fear of him, the host of heavenly bodies shed their luster. So very clear, no need to explain anything. And basically what it means, yad bhayat, we have to understand that bhaya does not necessarily mean that, the sun is always fearful and, it's trembling out of fear and let me shine otherwise. No, everything is being done. Everything is under the control of time. That's what it means. That, in a very well-managed organization, everything is being done very properly. And you may say, because of fear. But it's not that consciously everyone is experiencing fear and therefore everyone is running. It's just organized in a very proper manner, and that's what it means. And therefore, Prabhupada explains, Maya Dyakshena Prakritik Suyate Sacharacharam. Everything is just working under my direction. That's the meaning of this sort of statement, which are many in different literatures. In Upanishads, the same statements are also there. Verse number 41. Yatvanas patayo bhitam latas choshad bhik saha latas choshadi bhik saha svesve kale bring grihnati pushpani cha palani cha. So again, the plants are growing, the creepers and herbs are growing, and they bring in a proper time seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in a proper season. So again, the same idea is that everything is being organized by time, and we have to observe it very philosophically and understand that here is the time which is behind this. Otherwise, why it is so orderly? How is it so orderly? Because of the entering of the time force in everything. The time imperceptibly is everywhere, and it switches on different mechanisms which are there. Okay, verse number 42. Sravanti sarito bitam not sarpat udadhiryata agnirindhe sagiribhir burna majjati yad bhayat. So many other things are happening. The rivers flowing because of the fear of time, and the ocean is not overflowing again because of the fear of time. It's very amazing actually that the ocean always remains in the same borders. Why? Because that's the arrangement of the time. And the fire is burning because of the time, And the mountains, even though they're so heavy, they're not sinking into the earth. And the earth itself is not coming down to the ocean, which is there in the universe and floating. And Prabhupada explains in the purport how the planets are there because of the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, energy of Supreme Personality of Godhead, not just some impersonal power, but ultimately, he says that the material scientists explain that all these different planets are floating because of the law of gravity or some other law. But the actual lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we speak of law, we must understand that there must be a lawmaker. So again, the same point is being made here, that we see that everything is working orderly, everything is managed, everything is just really working properly. Only the government doesn't work properly. Everything else works properly. So the sun is working properly. The whole order of material nature is working properly. And that means that there is a controller. And this controller, in the form of time, is reminding us about his existence. And only foolish people say that by chance it's working like this. By chance. Everything by chance, yeah, right, by chance. There was a joke that one atheistic person, some high governmental official, he came to India. And he said openly, from the outset, when he came to India, he said that I don't believe in God. I know India is a very spiritual country, but I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. And after being for some time in India, for some months, he came, and after leaving India, he said, actually, I changed my mind. Somebody asked him, actually, I changed my mind. I believe in God now. He said, and the journalist asked him, how come you changed your mind? Because of the spiritual influence of this land, or because of the people? Maybe you met some saintly persons. He said, no. I just saw how your government works, and I can't understand how it's all working, but still it works. Therefore, I start believing in God. Huh? Yeah. So that's.
Only God knows how it's working.
Yeah. That's very true. Like there is another very nice story. Like Prabhupada came to one temple, and the temple devotees were very much, working day and night, preparing. And when Prabhupada sat and started giving class, he closed his eyes, started speaking something, and everyone fell asleep. And Badrinarayan Maharaj tells this story. He was in the kitchen, and he came to the temple room to see what's happening. And he saw this scene. Prabhupada is sitting there, speaking something with closed eyes, and everyone else is sleeping. And then Prabhupada opened his eyes. And then Prabhupada said, everything is in this movement is happening by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And then Prabhupada opened his eyes. He looks through his glasses and saw that the whole room is sleeping. And he said, this is a fact. Everything is working only by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So this is what is explained in these verses. Okay, the verse number 43. Nabhodadati shvasatam padam yan niyamad adaha Lokam svadeham tanute Mahan saptabhiravritam. The subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky, subject to control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its 7 coverings under the supreme, under his supreme control. So again, the same point: the sky is there, the planets is there, and the order is there, and there's basically repetition of the same point. Prabhupada is explaining the structure of the universe here by commenting on this. And anyway, so verse number 44. Gunabhimani no deva sargadishvasya yad bhayat vartante niyugam yesham vasha etach characharam. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature, Guna Abhimanaha Devaha, the devas who are in charge of the gunas, carry out the function of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Sarga Adi, Asya Yad Bhayat. So we know that ultimately that the gunas of material nature, they create, and there are devas behind the gunas. Shiva, destruction; Vishnu is maintenance. So the amazing point here is that even Vishnu is under the control of time, because Vishnu is, the guna avatar of the Supreme Lord here, and Krishna is, of course, beyond the time. But Vishnu, who is an immanent manifestation of God here in this material world, he is doing everything according to the proper design of this world, according to the original design. So he's also performing his function in the creation, which is important. And Brahma, of course, is creating this world. They are not doing it whimsically. That's the point. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under their control. So if they are controlled by the time, what to speak about everything else, because everything else is under their control. Vasha etach characharam, the moving and non-moving living entities, they are under the control of this. And therefore Brahma Samhita starts with Ishvara Paramah Krishna, as Prabhupada quotes here. And the last verse, which we read now, Sonanton takarah kalo Nadiradi krita vyaya Janam janena janayan Marayan mrityunantakam. So he, Saha, this time, is Ananta, is endless. But at the same time, he is Antakaraha, this Kalaha is Antakaraha, puts the end to everything. Anadir, he does not have any beginning, but Adikrit, he starts everything. Everything is being started by the time. And Avyayah, he is inexhaustible, eternal, in other words. Adikrit, not liable to change. He's not changeable himself, even though he changes, he starts and he ends everything. Janam Janema Janayan, and he is the cause of the birth of all living entities, and also Marayan Mrityunantakam. He is the cause of death, not only of all the living entities, but the Lord of death. Mrityuna Antakam, of Yamaraj himself. The eternal time factor has no beginning and end. It is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of criminal world. I have my doubts about this particular statement. I think this is a transcriber's mistake. I just cannot understand how it's... Most probably Prabhupada says material world, and the transcriber, being himself a criminal, heard criminal world, the maker of the criminal world. How is that the time is the maker of the criminal world? Because there is no, there is nothing in the purport which would say this. Probably material world.
In Russian translation, world prison.
Or maybe of the world as a prison, but it's not really. It's our attempt to make sense out of this. But anyway, it brings about the end to the phenomenal world. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. And likewise, it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraja. And Prabhupada, he ends this purport. It's a beautiful purport which he says. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. A devotee desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally. His servitor exists eternally. And the service exists eternally. So, the implication here, or the meaning here, is that if you understand the temporary nature of this world, and if you have the fear of this time, which puts an end of everything, you have to develop the eternal service attitude, desire to serve. And if this service attitude is established, then you become eternal, because the Lord exists eternally, His servant exists eternally, and the service to the Lord exists eternally. That's how Prabhupada beautifully ends this purport. That's it. Thank you very much.
I think when I heard criminal world, I thought I was fine.
Okay.
Because reason being that sometimes it is said that this world is made for the rebellious living entity.
It's possible. Therefore,
fulfill their desire.
Therefore, in Russian translation, it is said that this world which is a prison. It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, well, that's the only possible thing I could figure.
Yeah. The maker of this criminal. Possible. But Prabhupada doesn't say anything about this in the purport, and there is nothing here, so whatever it is. But it's good to be reminded that this world is a prison for criminals, for us, for rebellious, yeah. So maybe this is like this, maybe. Any question? Yes.
In 44 sloka, Lord, as a Gunavatara, he is also in the hands of the time. How it could
it basically means that, first of all, Krishna is outside of time. Krishna is not. But when we see, it is said that all the avatars, they come in a particular time, in a particular order, right? So it means that there is a law behind it, and of course, lawmaker is himself. It's like, the president of the country or the king of the country may make a law, but he himself also abides the law. He doesn't have to do it, but he abides the law. He follows the law to set the example. So in the same way, it is said here that, everything works according to the law, and the time is, in one sense, it's like, the boss in a big company, he also comes to the job on time, right? He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to come at all, but he comes in the office on time. So the same way, Vishnu also follows this. Okay? So we are 10 minutes before the time. We're somehow or other controlling the time. We are before the time.